Okay, we are back, and I am talking about the latest round of lies being told by my adversaries in my defamation lawsuit in Australia. And so again, they're trying to equate my defense of liberty and the Constitution for criminality. And I started to say before the break that our whole legal system is built on protecting the innocent. It's more important to protect the innocent than punish the guilty. You know, there's an expression that it's better that 100 guilty people go free than one innocent person be in prison. But apparently, that's not true in Australia. According to 60 Minutes Australia, down under, they would rather put 100 innocent people in jail just to make sure that one guilty guy doesn't get away with it. I mean, I don't know if it's really like that in Australia. I doubt it, but I wouldn't want to live in a country like that. You know, a lot of times in America, guilty people go free. It happens all the time. The cops screw up, right? Something happens with the chain of evidence. They break the chain or the custody, or they don't give somebody their Miranda rights. You know, they don't say you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and be used against you. If you don't Mirandize the suspect and then he says something, well, you know, it's inadmissible. So a lot of times, guilty people are let go. It happens all the time to protect our constitutional rights. See, the most important law that the government has to enforce really is the Constitution. Yes, I want the governments to go after the money launderers or people who break the law, but the most important law that has to be enforced is the Constitution. It's important that the government not break the law. It's more important that the government honor the law than any one individual. Because when the government violates the law, the whole country suffers. You know, a criminal, yes, you know, some individuals suffer from a crime and that's bad, but not 300 million of us. So it's the government. That's where it's the most important. So if a crook, right, if a tax cheat gets away with tax cheating, that's okay if it means that we protect our constitutional rights. I am not willing to surrender my freedoms and liberties just so the government can catch every tax cheat. Some people are going to get away. You know, the government has to figure out how to enforce the tax laws while respecting the Constitution. Now, they're probably going to end up using this podcast against me. Oh, you see, this is proof. He's advocating for criminal behavior. No, I'm not. I want the government not to behave criminally. I want the government to obey the law. I guess in Australia, no one gives a damn what the government does. The government can do whatever it wants because maybe the Australian government is not restrained by a constitution the way the United States government is. Now, also, another thing that they're using against me to prove that my reputation was horrible was that I defended my father, which I have. But I've never advocated that people follow my father's advice. In fact, every time I've talked on this podcast about my father and his position on taxes, I've always said that I don't advocate that you follow his advice. Even though I sell his books, I tell people, hey, go to Schiff Radio or Schiff Books and buy a copy of The Federal Mafia to understand my father's arguments against the income tax. I've always prefaced that by saying, don't follow his advice. Pay taxes, right? And, you know, don't take the principled constitutional stance that my father took. I've never advocated that. I mean, I've never done it myself. Why would I advise or advocate that other people do something that I'm not willing to do myself? Everything I do for myself is what I advocate, especially when it comes to my investment strategies. I am recommending that other people do what I'm doing myself. Now, the degrees are different because everybody has a different, risk tolerance or objective. But in general, the the investment principles that I recommend for my clients are the same ones that I follow personally. The same thing with taxes. And in fact, the other thing that they're using against me to prove that I'm advocating tax evasion is that I advocate lowering taxes, tax minimization, tax avoidance. Like they're trying to use, my movement to Puerto Rico. The fact, hey, he lives in Puerto Rico, so he's obviously a criminal. He obviously is fine with tax evasion. He's living in Puerto Rico. I'm in Puerto Rico not to evade my taxes. If I wanted to evade my taxes, I didn't have to come to Puerto Rico. I could have done that from Connecticut. The thing is, I abide by the tax laws the way the government enforces them. And so I took advantage of a legal strategy by relocating to Puerto Rico. In fact, there was an article today in the Wall Street Journal that focused on a lot of people that moved to Puerto Rico because it was focusing on the real estate market. But all those people moved here, after me, and they paid much higher prices for their properties than I did. But they moved here. Are they all criminals because they moved here? Of course not. There's nothing criminal about this. It's like if you take advantage of the mortgage deduction, are you a criminal because you used a lawful deduction to lower your taxes? That's all I've ever advocated, is reduce your taxes lawfully. Now, why do I think people should pay less taxes? Because I don't want the government to have the money. I think the money is better if it's left in the hands of the people who earned it. I think government is destructive. I think government hurts the economy with the taxes that it collects and the money it spends. So I think the more money that's left in the private sector, the better. So out of patriotism and out of my economic understanding, I advocate that people try to minimize their taxes. But there is nothing illegal about that. No American has a legal or moral obligation to pay $1 in taxes more than the law provides. And so if you can legally reduce your taxes, there is nothing wrong with that. But 60 Minutes is trying to equate that with tax evasion and my advocacy of tax evasion. So they say, hey, even though we accuse this guy of committing tax fraud, helping criminals launder money, so money laundering, all these crimes, it's okay because he's a criminal anyway, because he's a conservative or because I'm a libertarian, believe in the Constitution. This is what they're advocating. Meanwhile, go online. You can see that the 60 Minutes defamatory broadcast that 60 Minutes has known was defamatory for 2.5 years, because they've known the entire time they were BSing that they had no evidence to prove any of the allegations that are in that broadcast, even though they've now admitted publicly to the court that they have no evidence. And so I win. They haven't taken this stuff down. It's still up there. It's still up on YouTube. It's still up on the 60 Minutes website with all their past programs. It's on the Age website. They have a condensed version of that 60 Minutes broadcast. They haven't taken any of it down. Of course, have they apologized? No. They accused me of committing these crimes, destroyed my entire business. I lose tens of millions of dollars, maybe more. My business partner lost his life because he ended up having a heart attack and died, Mark Anderson. They do all of this. Think about all my customers now, now it's almost 11 months and not a single customer of my bank has gotten one nickel out of that bank, right? But all this stuff happened. The dominoes all fell because of 60 Minutes Australia, right? They started this whole chain reaction by accusing me of using my bank